All right. Good week, everyone. Shavua Tov, and a good day to everyone. And now we are putting a little bit of light into this very confusing world and bringing the topic that should be interested, should be at the fore of everyone's attention and conversations and everything and etc. That is, what's the main topic? Okay, why is the creator not revealed here? Why is the creator not revealed here? And what can we do to make the creator revealed in the creation? That should be our pressing question, should be on our minds. What can we do to make the creator revealed? Or in simple language, what can we do to make the world more meaningful? Meaningful. And that's the job of the Jews, essentially, is to bring blessing into the world. That's what God said to Abraham immediately after the Akedah. He took his son to sacrifice him, and he didn't sacrifice him. God told him to do it. Bizarre story, but nevertheless, afterwards, he said that your offspring will be a blessing to all mankind. The whole world will be blessed by you. That's the job of Judaism, is to bring blessing and meaning to the whole world. So that's what we're doing. Here we go. That's what we're doing. And that's why we need Mashiach. This is an example. These words are the words of Mashiach. This is written by the Mashiach of his generation, which was the first Chabad Rebbe about 250 years ago, Rabbi Shneur Zalman, and he wrote a book called the Tanya, and books to basically explain these ideas in the Tanya, which are, just like I said, the oneness of God and the importance of every human being, which the Jewish people are supposed to reveal in the world. So here we go. So one very major, totally unique and seemingly meaningless miracle that happened in Jewish history, and in fact, the birth of the Jewish people, and maybe one of the most meaningful and mysterious events that occurred in the whole history of the world, is the splitting of the Red Sea. Very inspirational, right? They made movies about it and etc. None of the movies got it right, but it was, even though the movies that did put the simulations or whatever it is of the splitting of the sea, they only did a very fraction of really what happened over there when the sea split. Of small fraction, but even that small fraction is tremendously impressive. And people are trying to I even read somewhere, I don't know, that the United States, they wanted to make that their symbol, the Jews going over the sea. How that was the it's a very, how do you say, inspiring idea that God took a whole nation out of. First of all, it shows that God is active. Secondly, it shows that God, I mean, first of all, it shows that God exists. Secondly, it shows that God is active. He does things. And also it shows that God cares. Unfortunately, he had to drown all the Egyptians, but it says the future redemption, God is not going to have to kill anyone. Everyone will just change their attitudes. Their attitudes. And then when they do, it'll be different, right? There won't be any false news, and there won't be any false leaders, and there won't be any false teachings, and there won't be any false ideas and ideals and philosophies and and theories and things like that. Okay, so let's talk about today. We're going to talk about this idea of the splitting of the sea. What exactly happened over there when God split the sea in order to let the Jews out of Egypt? I mean, at first glance, it was totally meaningless. We're going to learn that it was, in a way, more, how do you say, unnecessary than you can possibly imagine. First of all, God, why did God even have to take the Jews out of Egypt? He could have just, made all the Egyptians go to sleep or something like that, or just, develop inferiority complexes or something, and let, Jews, their conscience would bother them to say, well, we've been enslaving the Jews for so long. Let's, let them go. They could have made a deal, a two-state solution. Let's let the Jews say two-state solution. Let the Jews, we'll give them a part, and we'll keep a part, and we'll, live in a symbiotic relationship, and everything will be fine. Why not do something like that? And then God could give them the Torah where the Jews were. What do you have to have all these plagues and the 10 plagues and the splitting of the sea and going through the desert and all this stuff? What do you have to have it for? But nevertheless, because it's written in the Torah, so it must be something that not only was it necessary, but it's something that's teaching us something that's necessary for us today. It's necessary for me and you, and for every single Jew, and for every single human being to know what are the implications. What exactly happened over here? What is it coming to teach us? The word Torah means teaching. It's coming to teach us a positive lesson. A positive lesson. And it's obviously a very difficult lesson because the Jewish people themselves didn't get it. Right after they split the sea, just a month or some couple months afterwards, they worshipped the golden calf. They went exactly opposite what God. So it didn't really impress them that much. So it happened back then to impress us right now. We're going to see why. Well, let's go. Here we go. Okay, so the Jewish people, they went over the Yam Suf. They went over I'm going to stop calling it the Red Sea, because it's really not the word red is not implied in there, in those words. Yam Suf. I don't see anywhere. I would like to call it the Red Sea. Everybody calls it the Red Sea, but it's not the Red Sea. I mean, I guess because it's similar to the word Suf means like reeds. Reeds. Someone said the Reed Sea. Okay, well, who knows what? Well, they want to call it the Red Sea. Call it the Red Sea. Okay, so when the Jews went over the sea, so they sang a song. And they sang a song. All of them sang a song to God. And there's a couple of different opinions about what is it. But in general, the Jewish people sang in unison. All 3 million of them, or all the men, whatever, they all sang in unison together. So let's say there were 600,000 men above the age of 20, and they all sang together with no rehearsals. And what did they sing? It says, Az Yosher, then Moses and the Jewish people sang this song to God. And they said, Ashira LaHashem, I will sing to God, ki go'oi go'ah, because he is very great, very high. Sus v'rochvo rama b'yom. The horse and rider he threw into the sea. They came running after Moses with their chariots. They had all these chariots, 300 whatever his chariots, and they came after Moses and the people, and God just whipped them all. They all drowned. And then the Jewish people sang the song afterwards. Behold, now let us understand what is this whole idea of the splitting of the sea. 1 second. This. What is the idea of the splitting of the sea? V'gam, also, hello, lefi derech b'mei Yisrael b'mitzrayim l'eretz Yisrael. If you want to take a path from the Jewish people from Egypt, leaving Egypt to Eretz Yisrael, lo hayalem derech alayam. They didn't have to go across this river at all. That was not necessary. Look at a map, any map, and you'll see that there's no river that stands between Israel and Egypt. Ela ba tzitziva Hashem, God commanded them. It says, Vayeshuva yechanu. He said that he detoured them, made them go around so that they would be facing the sea. V'gam also lo avru et hayam. And according to Judaism, they did not really go over the sea from one side to the other. Ela ba'otot tzad sheyordu, ba'otot tzad atzmo alu. The same side that they went in, they just made like a sort of a U-turn, a long U-turn, and they came out further down on the beach on the same side that they went in. And the Egyptians followed them in this path. So what's the whole reason for? They didn't have to go there at all. They didn't accomplish anything. They just went into the sea and they came out on the same side, so they didn't cross over. And not only that, they didn't even have to cross over, right? They didn't have to. We see that they didn't cross over, and they still got into the land of Israel. Hatam, it says, receive Yadu Mitzrayim. The reason is, it says, God said that Egypt will know that I am God. God wanted to teach the Egyptians, all those soldiers, a big lesson, right? Wrong. It doesn't make any sense. But we have to understand. It says, it says that not one of them lived. There's one midrash that says that Paro lived afterwards. The Paro survived. But who was he? He wanted to teach all of Egypt this message. And there was no Egypt left. He drowned everybody. Right? The country of Egypt is still the same country, but the people living there is a totally different people, different race, different. So they didn't know anything about not only did they not know, even the Jewish people didn't know. The Jewish people would have, like I said, just a couple months later, they worshiped the golden calf. So what's going on? Why did God do this very bizarre miracle? Ella Inyan, but the topic is like this. It's coming to teach us something. Now, it's very important to know that the whole idea of Hasidic teachings, especially Chabad, but in general, Hasidic teachings, there's all these other different groups from Baal Shem Tov, Gur and Bells and Vishnitz and all these, and they have their own writings also. Breslev. And the purpose of it is to show that the Torah is alive. In other words, everything that's in the Torah is inside of us. And it's coming to make us more dynamic so that we can make the world more dynamic. That's the idea of Mashiach. Mashiach is going to make the world a more dynamic place. Is going to show us that this world is infinitely more real and true than going to heaven. Going to heaven is definitely not the goal. Even though there is such a thing as heaven, don't think that there's not, but it's not, that's not the goal. Going to heaven is like making a pit stop in a race or something. This world is the main place. Here's going to be revealed the essence of God. Here's going to be the essence of God. Here's the most meaningful place at all. And that's what the Torah is coming to teach us. God gave the Torah in this world to make this world a meaningful and productive and blessed and place, and to every and each individual in it, because the people are the most important thing. So we have no idea how important every individual is, and every deed of every individual and every moment of every individual is to God, to the Creator. And that's what the Torah is here for. So this is coming to teach us a lesson. Everything in the Torah is inside of each and every one of us. So everything that's the idea of the splitting of the sea is something inside of us now. It's something alive right now. It's not just a history story. Did it happen? Did it not happen? It's something telling us right now, and we have to make it happen. Here we go. Ella Inyan is Kihine, behold, Yesh Mitzrayim b'kol Adam. There is Mitzrayim in every person and in every time. Mitzrayim means false limitations. That's what Mitzrayim means. Mitzrayim means false limitations. B'kol Adam b'kol Zaman. In every person and every time. False limitations. Right? You convince a child that he's a fool in school, he thinks he's a fool his whole life. That was the old thing of America, the land of opportunity. It gave people opportunity to be who they are. Right? To be who they are, to be what they are. Opportunity. And therefore, it says every generation, a person is obligated to see himself as though he left Egypt. Egypt. Because even it says, in order that you should remember the day of going out of Egypt, all of the days of your life. I'll give you a simple example. The Jewish people are the sons of God. It says clearly, God said, Moses, go into Paro, say, let my sons go, my children go. The Jewish people are called the sons of God. It says it twice in the Torah. What does that mean? We're the sons of God. So the Tanya explains it. But essentially what it means is that we're not just creations. We're part of the Creator. That we have powers to do good that are unimaginable. But we have to do these powers only in the world. And the world confuses us. That's called Egypt. The confusion and the limitations and the how do you say, the discouraging the atmosphere of the world, that discourages us from being ourselves and from being happy and making blessing, etc. That's called Egypt. And everyone has to go out of his Egypt and realize what it means that we're creations, that we're the sons of God, and the non-Jews are the creations of God. God creates them from love every instant. But to feel this, you also feel responsibility. And that responsibility, that's freedom. That's really freedom. That you're not just free from, you're free to. That says in the Tosefta, that's one of the commentaries in the what's called the oral Torah. You have to remember also, you have to remember every day, you have to remember going out of Egypt, and you also have to remember the splitting of the sea. How can you remember something that never happened? I mean, I was in the sea. You know when the sea split? 3,300, 28 years ago or something like that. How can I remember a thing like that? So the Rebbe says, I'll show you how. You'll see. It's happening inside of you. You have to remember also the splitting of the sea. You have to go out of Egypt, and part of that going out of Egypt is splitting the sea. What is the splitting of the sea? And here's Kiyom Razal. It says, Al Gimel Devorim Olo Moment. Now we're going to explain. See this world that we're in? Contrary to the World Economic Forum or whatever, the world does not stand on money. the world stands on three things. It doesn't stand also contrary to science. The world does not stand on atoms or energy or whatever. And contrary to the politicians, the world does not stand on politics and on great leaders and everything. The whole entire world that you see that exists, that stands with all the economics and all the politics and all the science and all of this, is really based on three things. Ready? Torah, the Torah that God gave the Jews. Avoda, prayer in the time of the temple was sacrifices combined with prayer, and gemilat chasadim, and acts of kindness. Avoda ain't karbonos. What it says, avoda, that's the sacrifices. There was fire that came from above. We just learned this in Bati Lagani. Yored al Gabi Mizbecha came down on the altar. Ari Yadachal Karban, it was a lion that ate up the sacrifices. That was in the first and the second temple. Mishachara Beit HaMikdash, when it was destroyed, the temple is tiknut tefillah keneged korbanos. Some people say it only came down in the first temple and the second temple. In any case, afterwards, now we don't have the temple. We have the sacrifices. Well, I'm sorry, we don't have the temple and we don't have the sacrifices, but we have prayer in the place of the sacrifices. Prayer. How is prayer in the place of the sacrifices? What was the sacrifice? They took an animal, and we just learned that in Bati Lagani. They took an animal and they made it holy. They put it on the temple. They did exactly with the animal what God commands the Jews to do. So the animal became connected to the Jews, and the Jews became connected to God. So and that connected the whole entire world to God. It made like a pipeline, a pipeline to God. That's the sacrifices. And every day they did it, the world became more holy. When the temple was destroyed, so now we have prayer. Prayer does the same thing. We take our natural desires and we elevate them when we think about God. That makes a pipeline to God. To give your soul, your animal soul, your natural wills and desires, that it should be included in the fire from above. What is this fire from above? Ava Rabba, tremendous love that comes from above. What are we saying? God creates us, right? God creates me, God creates you. If we think about that and we think that it's really true, and we start to realize that it is really true, so you can come to a tremendous appreciation of God. You realize that God is not just some angel or something. God is creating us. God is infinitely, infinitely real, and we are infinitely dependent on him. He's creating us. Our whole being depends on God. Is that really true? The Rebbe is saying that it is true. Now, once we realize this, then we realize how important we are. We're being created by God. And all of this importance that we have in our very life, it comes from God. So that awakens in us love. That awakens in us a tremendous appreciation of God. And this love is coming from above. That we appreciate everything that God is giving us from above. And one of the things that God is giving us from above is the ability to love him. Love is a soul trait. And that our soul is being created by God. This comes from above. That's what's called an arousal from above. An arousal from above means that God arouses us because he wants us to serve him, to appreciate him. That's what God wants. And we don't appreciate him. And he created us that way, so we don't. But he helps us to go out of this. He gives us a help. That's called an arousal from above. Okay. Now, having to understand, what's this got to do with splitting of the sea? We'll see. So the world stands on three things: Torah, acts of charity, and avoda, service. A service is prayer. Prayer means coming to love and appreciate God. Lahavin, because understand, that's one of the things that the world stands on. Lahavin, to understand, Ketzad, how this avoda, the sacrifices, this hints at prayer. What is this fire that comes down from above? Jewish people are praying all the time, all over the world. You don't see any fire coming from above. What's this fire? What is the fire that comes from above? The fire is what it says in Shmona Esrei. I'll tell you what this is in a minute. Lomer, to say, call a brachos, bracha to Hashem. Okay, so prayer in general is us coming from below to above, us appreciating God. It's a fire that we make on our own, from below, from us, that we appreciate God, that starts to inspire and inflame our emotions to the Creator. Once we realize that there is such a thing as a creator, and then we realize how close the creator is to us and how much God does for us, right? Then we have to think about it. So we think we're the ones that make the fire. That's the fire that comes from below. What is the fire that comes from above? Says the Rebbe, that's what's called the 19 blessings that we make in the Shemona Esrei. We talked about this before. The Shemona Esrei is 18 blessings, and the rabbis added a blessing. Later on, after the destruction of the temple, they added on a blessing against the church, essentially. This is what it says, Baruch Hashem Elokei Yisrael, min olam va'ad olam. We want to bless God. That's what it says. God said to Abraham, you will be a blessing. A blessing means perish milamaila me'alma diskasia, that God reveals from the hidden world, la'alma disgalia, to the world that is, from the world that's which is concealed, and that's how God is concealed, to this physical world where God is revealed. Hainu mi bechinat soviv kolamim, le'memali kolamim. Two aspects of God. Soviv kolamim is how God is above the world. That's when we say what God is up. And mamali kolamim is how God fills the world. Everything in the world is amazing. God enlivens everything. Everything is different. That's called God being in the world. Soviv kolamim is we feel that there's a creator of the world. Mamali kolamim, that's the creation. So feeling what we want to feel, the creator in the creation. Why do we want to do this? Because God wants us to. God is making the whole creation. He's making the creation for this, that we should feel him. And that's accomplished by our deeds. It all depends on us. That's the whole thing of the Holy Temple. People did things. The Jewish people, they had to work, they had to do. It wasn't just a place you went into and you were just spaced out. Right? There were the Kohanim and the Levites were working. They had to do work. That's the idea of avoda. And then now there's no temple, so we have to do the work. What's the work? To think, contemplate God, and then realize. When you realize that God really is real, He really is creating us, then that arouses our heart as well. Hashem, because the name, because Hashem hu Elokim, because God Yud Kei Vav Kei, that's the name of God, which is above the world, is Elokim. That's the aspect of God that creates the world. Okay, Shemekasher Nafshel. When a person attaches his natural, animal, human self to the Creator, one echad, azai, then gam bechinas eshel hamayla, then even the fire that comes from above, from this level, is called soviv kolamim, that surrounds all the worlds. Shora, it rests and is revealed in his soul. So that's what the Rebbe is talking about, appreciation. Simple appreciation. That's the secret of the world. That's really what makes the world go around, is appreciating God and appreciating that God is creating everyone. So everyone is important in God's eyes. So everyone should be important in our eyes. That's the way it should be. God is creating everyone. But first of all, we have to appreciate God. Appreciate God. And appreciating God, that's what's called connecting the world with above the world. In other words, physical reality and also spiritual reality with true reality. Because God is creating the spiritual in the heaven and the spiritual in the physical. So this is a matter of realizing what is really real. What is really real? And to a degree, we're going to see this is something like we talked about before. This is like going out of Egypt, going out of your false little mindset to a bigger mindset, to realize that, I'm here for a purpose. What is my purpose? I'm not just here to enjoy, to get physical pleasures out of the world, or that I should increase. I'm here for a purpose. And what is my purpose? That's what Moshiach is supposed to reveal to everyone, what their purpose is, and that there's a God that gives us this purpose. He's creating us for a purpose. Ubiranya, let's explain this. Let me make this a little bit bigger over here. Why not? There we go. Ubiranya, let's explain this. Ki Omer, as all the rabbis say, call Mashiach biyabasha, everything that there is in the dry land, there is in the sea. In the sea, there is called the Almal Diskasia. That's what's called, sea represents the upper worlds. The Abasha and the dry land, that's the physical world that we see. So everything that's here in the physical world that we see with trees, with cats, with dogs, with beaches, with houses, with everything in the world, there's a counterpart in the spiritual worlds. Behold, the difference between the dry land and the sea. Physical, let's take the example. We're taking a metaphor here. Like the angels are like fish. All the spiritual worlds, they're like things in the sea. You go in the ocean, and under the ocean there's a whole world, universe there under the ocean. There's big mountains and there's valleys and there's all sorts of bizarre creations, the fish and creepers and strange things down in the ocean, under the ocean. It says, well, everything that same thing, just like the ocean is below us, but the spiritual worlds are above us, and they're like a reversed ocean. It's also hidden up there. The main thing about the ocean is that the sea covers over them, everything. Everything that's in the ocean lives from the ocean. And it's impossible for them to be on the dry land. You take a fish, you put it on the dry land, then immediately they die. Not immediately, it takes them a couple minutes, a couple whatever it is, but they die. They need to be in the sea, which is not the case. So they have to be swallowed up in their environment. That's these things that are in the sea. We can't. Everything is concealed there, and everything that exists in the sea lives from the sea, in the sea. Which is not the case. Beruim should be a basha, which is not the case. Creations which are on the dry land. Hine, behold, the eretz totzit simcha. They exist only because they're separate from the ground. The ground puts out plants, for instance, and it makes fruits lamaila, above the ground. Hagam, even though that the nurture of trees, for instance, comes from the ground, mimeno, from the ground. But the trees and things seem to be something separate on their own. How much more so the rest of the creations, asher boem, nefesh chaya, lamine, everything. So true, everything lives from the ground that there is in the world, right? Everything lives from the ground. The food comes from the ground, wheat, water, whatever comes from the ground. But nevertheless, the existence of man is above the ground, is separate. Man, animals, everything. When things die, then they become buried or dissolved into the ground. Then they're in the ground. But a thing that's alive has to be outside, separate from the ground, which is not the case in the sea. In the sea, it's exactly the opposite. Everything has to be included in the sea. It can't be separate. Alder says similarly, you can understand the difference between spiritual and physical. Alma discassia, alma discalia. The physical, the concealed worlds, and there's the spiritual worlds. From my flesh, I can understand God a little bit. There is in the soul, there's the soul, intellect and emotions. The intellect is divided into three aspects. In what's Chachman bin Adat. This is explained also in the Tanya, in the second chapter, and the third chapter. And the mitos of the emotions, they're divided into 7 emotions. V'yesh aleim, and they have gimel levushim. They have also 3 garments to this intellect and the emotions. V'gamim mechalkim. And the garments, which are thought, speech, and action, machshava, dibur, maisa, they're also divided into all sorts of details and etc. B'chlolim ein hey bechinos seichel umidos umachshava dibur maisa. This corresponds in general to intellect, emotions, that's 2, and 3 more, thought, speech, and action. This corresponds to nefesh, ruach, neshama, chay, yechida, the opposite order. Nefesh is the lowest aspect of the soul. That corresponds to action. Ruach, and that's a little bit higher aspect of the soul. That corresponds to speech. Nefesh, that corresponds to thought. Chaya, that corresponds to emotions. Yechida, that corresponds to intellect. There's different ways of dividing it up. Anyway, there's more and more levels, one above the other. higher than one the other. There's all these different levels of the soul, And each level of the soul can be divided up into these 5 general categories: nefesh, ruach, neshama, chayin, yechida. Each and every one has all sorts of levels on their own, which is not in any of the others. Yesh mi she'oved b'bechinas midas. Okay, so this is what makes a person's personality up. What makes a person's personality? His soul. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different personality. Everybody has different senses, talents, abilities, feelings, sensitivities, etc. Okay, so there's some people that serve God from emotion. Some people serve God more from intellect. Other people serve God more from action. Others more from speech, etc. The Cain ben neshama, also in the soul on its own, when it's not in a body, when it's in heaven. Oh, a second, 1 minute. Yesh kama bechinas. There are many levels of the soul itself, not just when the soul is in the body are these differences expressed. Also, the soul on its own when it's up in heaven. Achbad yesh bechem alma diskalya shenira amadregos mufradas begilui. Despite the fact that the soul is concealed, but in the soul, relatively, there is revealed aspect of the soul. In this physical world, it's thought, speech, and action. And even the soul, and there's the concealed aspect of the soul, which is the emotions and the intellect. Even in heaven, the soul in itself has aspects of the soul which are more given to revelation, and others which are more concealed. That they are totally negated in their source, which is what's called soviv kolmim. The soul, when it's up in heaven, it doesn't have so much of a personality. It feels more God. The kula kameh, because everything in front of God is like nothing. So they feel they're being created. From this level, this was the level of Moshe. That was the level of Moses. Moses, like it says by Moses, Kamina Maya Mishisi, who is drawn out from the water. Remember, we learned about this before. He was drawn from what's called the hidden worlds. Therefore, he was covered. And then the previous mimer said he came from Tohu. Therefore, it said that Moses couldn't speak. Why? Because speech was too low for him. That the level of speech and revealing was denied him because he was too high. Because he was so surrendered to God. Excuse me. It was difficult for him to bring this into being revealed. Like it says, V'nachnu ma. And that's the whole idea of all the blessings. Baruch atah. When we make blessings, and we make blessings, what does it mean? We bless God. We say the Shemon Esrei, 18, 19 blessings we make. What does it mean, blessing? What does it mean? God needs to be blessed? It says yes, because the word bless means to be drawn down. God made the world seem to be low, seem to be void of godliness, and he wants us to draw godliness down in the world. That's the fire that comes down from above. That comes from what's called the hidden worlds into the revealed worlds. Min olam v'ad olam. That God right now is hidden, right? I mean, we're sitting here, we're talking. God is creating me and creating you. Do you feel that God is creating you? I don't even know what that means. What do you mean God is creating me? God is creating the whole world. Don't you see it? No. Well, I don't see it either. I mean, but that's the fact. But it's hidden from us. The fact, the real truth, is being hidden from us. How important we are that God is creating us every moment. It's hidden from us. We don't see that. We don't feel it. That's the idea of a blessing. A blessing is that we draw from one world to the other. Mina olam va'ad olam. Sheyeh b'chinas alma diskasya. This level of the concealed godliness and what we call soviv kolmim, that surrounds, that defies all definition. Shehu b'chinas bitol, the kula kamei kalo chashiv, that we feel. Excuse me. Godliness and everything before God is like nothing. That it should be drawn down even into this physical world, v'ro'u kol basar, that all flesh will see godliness. Okay, this drawing down godliness from above, that's the service of the Kohanim, but the service of the Levites was a little bit different, and that we're going to talk about tomorrow, how also this connects to our going out of Egypt. But a little bit we learned that one of the reasons that we're in this world is to contemplate and think that there's a creator and that we're being created every moment. And that God is creating us purposely so that we should feel individuals, and we are all individuals, because each person is different and each person has a special responsibility to the world. Every person, Jew and non-Jew. But the job of the Jews is to wake the non-Jews up to this also. So we have to go out of Egypt first, and we have to have the splitting of the sea. And that's the Rebbe has explained a little bit about what is the sea. That's the concealed worlds. And now we have to split that and reveal the dry land to reveal this, all of what's concealed in the dry land, as we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. Yeah, doesn't stop. Okay.